Are you ready to invest in yourself today? Welcome to WealthBuilders TV, where investment leaders Billy and Becky Epperhart teach you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom. Scripture says in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." At WealthBuilders TV, our goal is to teach you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom in your finances, your business, and your investments. Let's join Billy and Becky.
Welcome to WealthBuilders TV, and honey, we're really excited about, of course, this particular episode that's coming up right now, because we're going to really talk about in this one, in the Money Mastery series, we're going to talk about what we call the Debt Snowball or debt elimination and how to get out of debt in your life. We're going to give you 9 steps to getting out of debt in your life, including your mortgage. That only takes 5 to 7 years. I say only because that includes your mortgage. Mm-hmm. So, and Becky, we went through that in our life early as a young couple, and I remember you did something. Honestly, we hadn't heard of Dave Ramsey. We hadn't heard of any teaching, or Billy Epperhart. We hadn't heard of any teaching.
I got that.
You got that on how to do this. We hadn't heard of any of that. No. And I remember you getting that yellow legal pad.
A yellow legal pad. We were in college. And we had a snowball, but it was going the wrong way. and it was freezing us. It was getting bigger and bigger. Absolutely. So one day I sat down, and I really, now that you're able to look back at it, I think it really was the Lord.
Yeah, it was.
And I started it and put it all on a legal pad, and then you take it from there.
And I mean, it was really astounding. And we actually, I think we got out of debt in like 14 months, which was quite substantial. But we decided we were going to do it. Now, at that time, we didn't have a mortgage, right? And we didn't have a car payment. So we were able to do that at that time. And so it's a powerful thing. So this will help you know that. So watch this, and it'll change your life. Well, welcome back to the next session in Money Mastery. Of course, we're talking about making sense of making money for making a difference. And of course, in the last session, we talked about the 4 steps to the first X, and we talked about becoming more valuable. And then we talked about learning to live on 80% and shared with you what to do with the other 20%. And so now we're going to continue with the next step, which will actually be the third step, or step 3. And that is, and we're talking about these steps to be able to reach the first X. So obviously in Money Mastery, we're teaching on the triple X factor. So there's 3 X's that we're going to teach you on. And I want to encourage you, if you don't know what those are and you're watching this session, then you need to go back to the earlier sessions and get that, so you'll have a foundation and understanding as we talk about these things, a better understanding. So step number 3 on the 4 steps you take to reach the first X that we teach you on in Money Mastery is step number 3 is know the difference between assets and liabilities. And so we share that with you, and one way to know when we talk about assets is just remember that assets bring you money, okay? And that's something that's really valuable when we start talking here into this, not just in this session, but the following sessions, that you understand that. And I'm going to illustrate it for you here in just a second. But then also remember that liabilities cost you money, right? And then there's such a thing that we're going to talk about called net worth. So let's talk about, for example, assets that bring you money. In an earlier session, we really gave you some examples of income stream. And so one of those, when we say income stream singular or income streams plural, we were talking about income streams in the light of not just what we call your earned income or your job income, but we were talking about it at the second X level. We were talking about knowing that you had passive income, not just earned income, but passive income from assets that increase in value over time. So an example of that would be to buy an investment house or investment property that actually pays you rent. And even here in the U.S. and many Western nations, rent off of real estate, where you're renting a piece of real estate out, is actually considered passive income. And because of that, it's taxed more favorably. Now, the point of all that is this, is that asset that we call let's say one single property of real estate is actually paying you through the rent that you earn. So we would call that house, for example, we would call that an asset. But now if you go, for example, back many years ago when I was investing early on, and today I invest, for example, in real estate, I invest primarily in luxury properties, a lot higher expense type properties, really candidly anywhere in the world. But there were places, and there still are in the U.S., where you could buy houses, for example, you could buy houses for $30,000 to $50,000. So let's just use an extreme example, kind of go in the middle. Let's say you find one for $40,000. To buy that house, just as an example, only illustration, you have to put $4,000 down to be able to buy that house. I honestly was in Best Buy, which is an electronics store here in the United States, not too long ago, and I watched a man talking about purchasing, true story, an $8,000 TV. Now, there were some in there more expensive than that, but I remember watching him. He was talking about buying an $8,000 TV, and he was going to buy the TV and put that TV on credit, and he was going to put $4,000 down on that television. Well, the $8,000 TV is a nice TV by anybody's standard, probably almost anybody's standard. But the truth is, if he was going to take $4,000 in cash and put it down on an $8,000 TV, when he walked out of that store with that TV and put it in his vehicle to go home, that TV was probably only worth $2,000. I guess if you really knew what you're doing on eBay or on Craigslist, you could sell it for $4,000 or $5,000. But the point is, it depreciated dramatically the minute you walked out the front door. You say, Billy, the point is, you could have taken that same $4,000 and put it down as a 10% down payment on a $40,000 house. Now look, I know many of you where you live, there's no such animal. I live in Denver. There's no such thing as a $40,000 house. However, in many of the Rust Belt states, meaning the Midwest here in the U.S., or many even of the Bible Belt states, there's many houses you can buy like that. I'm only using it for illustration to show you in step number 3, there's a difference between an $8,000 TV. It is always a liability. It costs you more money than it's worth when you walk out. When you put money down on that $40,000 house, that house has the potential to go up, not down, if you take care of it. And then the second thing is, it actually pays you. It actually puts money in your pocket. And so that's the difference. Assets bring you money. Liabilities cost you money. So if you want a secret, for me to give you some secret sauce, focus on shopping for assets. Then, if you want to buy an $8,000 TV, buy the TV not from your job income, but buy it from the income that's coming off your assets. And I'll cover this, of course, a little bit more in detail, but I just want to say, as an example, let's say you were using your house, okay? And let's say you have a $500,000, I went from a $40,000 house to a $500,000 house. So let's say you live somewhere, your house is worth $500,000. Let's say your mortgage on that house is $250,000. That means you have a net worth just on your house of $250,000. But now let's say you have a $50,000 in other kind of debt and bills. That comes off of there. So now your net worth, if we were going to include your home, would be $200,000. We take that $50,000 away, you now have a net worth of $200,000. And so the point I'm making to you is, you want to see that net worth grow. I like to call it playing the net worth game, which I covered earlier, teaching in this series. So that's what you want to focus on, is you have to know the difference between an asset and a liability. So here's the phrase I want you to remember. When you're spending your cash, especially at the first X level, which is what we're talking about, don't turn your cash to trash. Turning your cash to trash is purchasing a bunch of consumer goods that really have no intrinsic value once they're purchased. And so that's just a quick here on this. I want to give this to you. Now, on step number 4, we call this eliminate debt. Now, this is what many of you really want to see here in the beginning of reaching the first X. And I'm going to take a minute, so don't turn me off. I'm going to teach you what we call the debt snowball. That's where you learn to cascade paying off your debt. So if you have the debt we talked about a while ago, and a person that owns a $500,000 house, they have a mortgage of $250,000, and then they owe another $50,000, which those two added up make $300,000. They have a net worth, let's say in that situation, of $200,000. How do you pay that $300,000 off? That includes your mortgage, and you can do this in 5 to 7 years, and I'm going to show you how to do it right here in this session. And so on the debt snowball, just remember a couple of things, and we're going to show you the snowball, is to consume or be a consumer means to destroy. What the word consume means to destroy. And so if you're a consumer, what you're doing is you're destroying your power to get wealth. And so, for example, that's something that you really need to know. And then interest itself, if you're paying interest on your debt, that becomes an additional destroyer. Not only you paying and buying things that go down in value, but also the interest cost on that becomes a negative. It's like termites eating on the foundation of a house. They eat away your wealth if you don't understand how to use it properly. So let's talk about that. Proverbs 24 and verse 3 says, "Any enterprise is built by wise planning, becomes strong through common sense, and profits wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts." Now that's actually taking out of the Living Bible. Any enterprise is built by wise planning, becomes strong through common sense, and profits wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts. Now we're going to talk about here about how to eliminate consumer debt, and we're going to start with the story of two people. And I know for recording I'm not supposed to put on my glasses, but I'm going to need to here for just a second. And let's say person one earns $54,000 a year, and we're using that number simply because that's what, if you look at the household in many Western nations, especially here in the U.S., that's about what we call the median income of a household, is $54,000 a year. And let's say person one has lived in their home for 5.5 years. They have paid off all their debts, including their mortgage, cars, and credit cards, in 6 years. In other words, they took the debt snowball. They invest the $2,500 a month they had been wasting on debt payments, and in 24.5 years later, they will own their own home, have no debts, and have $3.2 million in investments. That's if they get a 10% average return. Now let's take person two. Person two earns $54,000 a year, has lived in his home 5.5 years, continued creating and paying on debts as before, pays his mortgage out over decades using standard payments. 24.5 years later, that person will own his home, still have a car, still have credit card and other debts, and have practically nothing in investments. So this just shows you what I would call the really passive way of learning to build wealth. Basically, there's almost a $3 million difference here on where someone ends up. Now you're going to hear me address this more later in later sessions about it's not only that getting out of debt is not only the only way you move forward in building wealth, because you need to learn not only how to save money and pay off your debt, but you also need to learn how to make money. But I'll cover that in another session. So we're taught in America about how to be consumers, and this is true in most Western nations. We're taught how to be consumers. And so when we look at that and we understand that, is how we spend money in our lives. How we spend money in our lives should truly reflect what matters to us. And so one way to say it is we earn money, we exchange our work, or what I would call our life energy, we exchange that. Most of the time, and how we make money is we exchange that for the money, for example, that comes to us. So how we spend it, or how it goes out of our life should be dramatically important. So when we're spending money, what we spend it on should really actually reflect what's important. So I said this to you earlier, but just to remind you, So consume means to destroy. What are we destroying? Remember, we're actually destroying our power to get well. So here's an example, not of an $8,000 TV, but of a $2,000 TV. And let's just give you an example of what that looks like. A $2,000 TV purchase with a credit card, it will take 31 years and 2 months to pay off the balance, making the minimum payment. You will pay a total of $10,202 in payments, $8,202 in interest alone, and that's calculated at 19.8% interest, which many credit cards will run today between about 15% and 25%, what we call APR. And that means annual percentage rate, right? And so, but the real question is, what do you think the TV will look like after 31 years? The truth is, it'll be a boat anchor, right? We've got these old square TVs that, you needed this real deep stuff to do. Remember you had to have these big places in your house to put them. Now you got these little light flat screen TVs. I don't know. Here in a couple of years, we might have like holograms or something where you're not even hanging a TV on the wall. But I'm just making the point that the way people spend money, they buy this on credit, take 31 years and 2 months to pay it off. And not only did you pay a lot more money, but what does a TV look like after 31 years? And so now let's look at a $275,000 30-year mortgage at 5% fixed interest rate. By the way, interest rates today, as I'm recording this, are a lot lower. But let me just give you a caveat here. I'm not going to charge you for this. It's free. Here it is. You got to realize historical interest rates, we're talking history, going back now, even as far back as 100 years. But if you just want me to be really relevant, go back 60 years. You go back 60 years, you'll find that the average interest rate we dealt with in this country were somewhere around 7%. So I'm way low just in this illustration. Now look, I know right now, as I'm recording this, 30-year mortgages are in the high twos. And so they're 2%. And so because of that, interest is really low. But we're going to use this 5% because it's a really safe number right now, just generally speaking. So you'll pay $531,453 in total payments, $256,453 in interest alone. So you can see here on the screen, the principal you're paying is 52% of what you pay out, and the interest you pay is 48% of what you pay. It's what we call amortization, right? So when your loan gets amortized, always remember, anytime you're doing an amortized loan, you're going to be somewhere in that 50-50 range, best case, unless you learn to pay off early. So as I read the proverb scripture earlier, here I want to give this to you on wise planning, common sense, and keeping abreast of the facts. I want to give you how to eliminate consumer debt. So I'm going to give this to you, and I'm going to try to cover this in the allotted time we have left. And so I want to get started to kind of show you how this works. So number one, cut up all but one credit card, right? So make sure you understand, we're talking about don't cut up the last one. We're going to tell you what to do with the last one. But leave one credit card. Now listen, right here, I'm going to tell you right up front, do not cancel your cards. So if you've paid them off, don't cancel them. You want to keep the credit open because that helps your credit score, just so we're clear here. So cut up all but one credit card. And then what I like to say about this is take that one credit card and put it in a coffee can. Remember the old metal coffee cans? Fill that coffee can up with water and put that coffee can in a freezer and freeze the coffee can. So in order to get to that one credit card to use it, you have to take it out of the freezer and remember it. I have that later in here, but I'm just going to tell you that now so you know that you're not going to use that credit card. And then number two is you want to pay off all current charges every month. So whatever your current charges are, so if you go buy $100 of groceries, you want to pay that $100 right then. Don't leave it. Don't pay interest on it. You pay off your charges every month. Or you take that card and do what we said, right? You freeze it. You stop using it altogether. You put it in the coffee can, fill it up with water, freeze the water. So if you ever decide to try to use it again, you got to wait for that to thaw in order to do it. So next, just stop using it all together, and then make the minimum payments on the debts that you have. So I want to emphasize this. Make the minimum payments, because we're going to tell you what to do with the rest. If you make the rest, I want you to make the minimum. So you know how in your credit cards or whatever you have when you get your statements every month, there's a minimum payment. So you're going to commit to stop using it, stop charging, or pay off what you do charge. And then we're going to commit to actually making the minimum payments. Okay, so we're going to do that. Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to begin with the debt that can be paid off the quickest using the minimum monthly payment. Now I'm going to give you an example of this here in just a second, and I'll show you how it works. But the biggest mistake people make is they start paying off the debt that has the highest interest rate. And that's not the way to do that. The way to do that here is you begin with the debt that can be paid off the quickest using the minimum monthly payment. Now, so again, I'll show you the slide. I put it up here. Begin with the debt that can be paid off in the shortest number of months, not the one with the highest interest rate. So let's look at this, for example, as an example. So if you were to list your debts, and remember, this is only an example. That's all this is. So if you have a mortgage at 6%, let's just say your balance is $139,000, and I have your payment $899.33. The number, that's your payment you have to make every month. The number of months it would take to pay that off is 154 months. This is just in this illustration. And then we have a car that you owe the balance of $7,800 on. The minimum payment is $522.65. So if you go down through here and you list all of them, car 2, credit card 1, credit card 2, let's just say this says home equity, which means you have a home equity line on your house, on your home, of $18,000, and your minimum payment on that is $272.66. What you would do is you're not listing the interest rate. You are listing the number of months it takes to pay off this current debt. So which one would you start with? You would start with here, car number 1, because you actually can pay it off in 14 months. And so what that means is when I'm looking at this, I would start with the 14 months right here, and then I would start making sure that I'm going to add extra to this to start paying it off even quicker than 14 months. So for example, I may decide, and I'm going to give you an example of this, I'm going to determine how much extra money I can put a month on that. Let me go back to it, on that one payment. On that one payment, I'm going to go here, C522. I'm going to ask myself, how much extra? $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month. Well, this is where I talk about determining your winning percentage. See if you can find something that would give you 10%, that would help you pay an extra 10%, for example, on this debt. And so here's some ideas for finding 10%. We call this your winning percentage. This is the extra money you're going to use to pay down this debt you selected that's 14 months. And so when you ask yourself these questions, what can I sell? Number 1, what expenses can I reduce or eliminate from my life, right? And then number 3, how can I earn extra money? Whatever those answers are, you're going to come up with what we call your winning percentage to the debt that can be paid off the quickest. Now that one is really important because now we're going to look at how this works, right? And how this works is that car number 1, the monthly payment that we see here, we see that we added, wow, look at this. We actually came up with $540 extra that we can pay every month, which means that we're now paying $1,062.65, and the number of new months is only 7. So we're able, the old months is 14, new months is 7. So what that means is we actually can, watch this now, pay this off in 7 months. Think about this now. You pay off and you're able to use over $1,000 a month to do it. Once it's paid off, then you apply the total amount you were paying on the debt, that $1,062 or so, to the next debt. So if we look at the next debt, We already paid, right, the $1,062 off, and the next credit card can be paid off. We just gave you examples because you've been paying on it. And so you pick the next one. Credit card number 1, what is number of months is 2 months, is 2 months. Credit card number 2 is 2 months. So in this situation, I would pick this one right here. It's got the highest balance. I pick it off and I would apply my vastly increased winning percentage to that debt. And what this allows me to do is then to pay off all my debts. And we call it the debt snowball because now that debt is paid off. Then if I go back to that picture, then I take what the minimum payment was and I began to make an accelerated payment here. And look at how quick by just taking here, I was applying it to car number 1 instead of credit card number 1. And in doing so, I was able to go through and look at this. My mortgage got knocked down to 49 months by being able to snowball down. And watch this, I got completely out of debt, including my mortgage, in 7 years. That's 84 months by using this illustration. So this is the way you can do this if you learn this and you just continue to apply it. Now you apply your winning percentage to actually creating the second X. Now you take this money because now all your debts have gone down. If you can see this line here, the gold line, it's actually going down. And now you're able you're able to start taking your extra money and start building these assets that are paying you. And pretty soon you reach a level of financial independence by practicing that discipline. So remember, to acquire assets, which is what you want to do, is you want to keep updated financial statements, play the net worth game. And then remember, one way you play that game is you acquire assets that are worth more than you paid for them, or you create assets that have market value. And here's an example of some of those: real estate, stocks and bonds, intellectual property. And then you continue to reduce your liabilities until you're completely out. Then you continue to build your assets. So I know we took a little more time in this session, but I trust it helps you. And we'll see you right back here. Bye-bye. Well, honey, that was exciting talking about the debt elimination snowball.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's because it's so dear to our heart.
It is.
And that we're still applying what we're doing. And must I say that you said going into it about how that we just had credit cards. We didn't have a mortgage. We didn't have a car payment. If you get this while you're young, then when you do have a mortgage and car payments, it's going to be super easy just to keep going and using this same debt snowball.
Absolutely. So the point is that many people are already there, right? So they already have the mortgage or they have the car payment. So that goes with the other debt. So I just want to encourage you to go to WBUniversityOnline.online, WBUniversity.online. You get the book. You also get the workbook that'll help you work through not only the debt snowball, but all the other steps we have. And you can go on and subscribe to the entire, plus get the PowerPoints, book, workbook, PowerPoints, all the video sessions for $99. And so this will be a blessing to you and help you work through it.
We hope you learned something of lasting value today from WealthBuilders TV. If you'd like any tools, teachings, or resources mentioned in the program, you'll find them online at wealthbuilders.org. WealthBuilders TV exists to teach you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom in your finances, your business, and your investments. Please consider partnering with us today. We will see you next time on WealthBuilders TV.